I'll let you guys finish up, then we'll. You guys are finished.
Yeah, pretty much it.
Okay. Paul. I haven't heard from Paul, so I imagine he's probably en route. Thank goodness they opened up the road over here now. That took 20 minutes off our commutes, didn't it? That was good news. I mean, we can wait another minute if you guys want to. We'll wait another minute. I don't see anybody in the public out there. So. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee. Ms. Smith, roll call.
Bob Fiedler.
Present.
Paul Adams. Mark Carlson.
Present.
Kathy Leaf. Tim Ramberg.
And do we have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
So moved. Second.
They're approved. Public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to the next item, business items. We'll go to our administrator, Ken Witt.
Take the hand off there from Ms. Smith. All right. So first off, maybe I'll introduce one of the new faces at the table here, which is Phil Golly. He's our Justice Services Director. He just started with us a week and a half ago now. Time flies, huh? He's got it all down pat now, though, and and he's a great addition for the county, so appreciate him.
Phil, if you'd like to make any comments, feel free to do them now.
Oh,
we'll
sure.
Get
Just
to the
quickly.
financial report in just a second.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a great first week and a half. It's getting to know everybody, meetings, that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to helping the Justice Services Center continue to move forward and serve the citizens and help out the court. So thank you.
Administrator Witt.
All right, now for the fun stuff. So the financial reports. So you're going to see consistency in the financial reports between different departments, across all the different standing committees, and compared to the budget. So we use the same format across all of those so that you become familiar with it and you're able to recognize things and to look things up. So I wanted to go over just a little bit of the structural format of this. Just take a couple of minutes to go into some depth on that. So if you see the account numbers and their names over on the far left side, if it starts with a 4, it's a revenue. It starts with a 5, it's an expense. So that's accounting 101 stuff right there. But we look at our revenues and we look at our expenses, and then the bottom line. In the budget, it's always going to be 0. But in the financial report, we'll have a bottom line that's ongoing. So that's what we're looking at as we come down. And we give you some pretty detailed accounts here to take a look at. As we come across the page, then the different columns that we're looking at. So what we're looking at is we're going to give you some historical data. So we're going to give you fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. So those are the year totals for those 2 years. So the end of the year for 2020 and 2021, so you can have some historical context. And then we're going to give you the prior year at the same point in time. So this financial report is looking at financial data through the end of April. We're so early in June here that we didn't have May's financial data finished yet. So we're looking at a month-old data, but we're looking at April. So prior year April, those are the actual revenues and expenses where we were. So if you skip over 2 columns, you're looking at fiscal year 2022, April year-to-date. That's our current financial data as of right now. And that's really the information that we're presenting. Everything else is for comparison purposes. But this column is the current information of where we are for revenues and expenses. Backing up a column then, we do give you the fiscal year 2022 budget. So this is what we budgeted for the year. This is what we'll expect to have. And then the last 2 columns, it's a balance remaining and percent remaining. We're just doing math there for you, so you don't have to do it in your head or start scratching it on paper. It's the dollar amounts that we're expecting yet and a percentage amount. So it gives you a way to quickly scan down the columns and see something that looks of interest to you. So here we have Circuit Court, which always stays within budget. When you look at individual line items, you will note some of them are showing up in red. And that's really just an expense allocation. So what account number they budgeted for and what account number they used. So we tell everyone, budget to where the expense needs to be. Don't chase where you budget it necessarily. We'll fix it the following year in the budget. If you're spending money more on operating supplies than you are on staff development, then we can adjust that the next year. But don't try to move money to where you have it budgeted. Expense it where it needs to be expensed. Ultimately, what I'm evaluating for all of our departments is that bottom line. So if you see here, fiscal year 2022, April year-to-date, they have a positive balance. It's in the black of $40,828. So they're in the black right now, which is a good thing. They have more revenues than expenses. If you look at their prior years, they ended 2020, 163,000 in the black, 21, 113,000 in the black. Compared to last year, they were 58,000 in the black at this point in time. And of course, the budget is 0. We budget for everyone to be at 0. But things come up during the year. We either get additional revenues, more revenues than we were expecting. We have less expenses that we were expecting. We may have vacancies where positions are unfilled for a period of time and you end up with some savings then. So different things happen that can affect that bottom line. So that's the structure of these financial reports and our budgets. So are there any questions on that structure? All right. I'll just quickly scroll through the other ones then so you can raise any questions that you have. Clerk of Courts, here's an example. So you see this is a revenue item with a negative balance. So that actually, it's in green instead of red. Because being negative on revenues is a good thing because it means you're over on the revenues. So that's the way math works. So we changed the color so that you knew that it was a good thing and not a bad thing. So we've received $2,155. We only budgeted $2,000 for the year. So this ignition interlock fees, we've already recouped more revenues than we had anticipated recouping. So that's a good thing. So we want to denote that with a different color to spell that out for you. Medical examiner. We have our Justice Services Department. This is Phil Golly's department. So his department is brand new. If you look at 2020, when there was 158,000 revenues, and then 21 was 327,000. And then 22 was 764,000. That doesn't mean we're going crazy there. What that really means is that we've been moving things around. We've been shifting things to here. We've been reallocating things from other places to this area, basically building a new department that's in support of our justice services system. So they support the circuit courts, they support the DA, they support the sheriff's office. And that's what their mission is to support those agencies. So it's a lot like, facilities. maintaining the buildings, or IT maintaining the technology that we have. Justice Support Services is here as an internal support department. And as their budget continues to grow and develop, you'll probably see more variations from them, but that's to be expected with a new department that's still getting its feet underneath it. Here we have the District Attorney's Office. If you have any questions on it, feel free to stop me and ask. Child support. On child support, you can see that they have a negative general property tax. They have a negative tax revenue. We do that because they generate more other revenues than they have expenses. And so that's actually tax revenue we're giving back to other departments. And so that's how we denote it from an accounting standpoint to show that. Child support and Register of Deeds are the two departments that and that ends up happening in. Law enforcement. So the Sheriff's Office is broken into multiple cost centers. The law enforcement is basically our patrol portion of the budget. 2,700 is the corrections, that's the jail. 2,510 is emergency management. And then we have 2,600, which is emergency communications. Those are the four cost centers that make up the Sheriff's Office. So that is the financial report. One of the things that you probably don't see within the financial report, because it's affecting more of the HHS budget right now, but it has sort of a secondary impact to these budgets, is the Mrt program. The Mrt program has about a $40,000 a year revenue line item, and it has associated expenses with providing that. It's a contract with the Department of Corrections. So their contract with us is ending June 30th. And Health and Human Services has not extended that contract. So we're looking for an alternate solution right now, but that could have some fiscal implications across other departments, including some of these departments, as we deal with how we're going to address that Mrt issue.
Could I raise a quick question at this point?
Sure.
I know that the courts, in the treatment court, utilize that program extensively, and it has an impact on them for sure. So I was wondering if I could ask at this point either Judge Needham or Judge Waterman if they had any comment on the impact of that on them, and if there's something we should talk about now relative to what some of those workarounds might be, and also communication as to how some of those decisions are made, so that we be sure that we bring the principals who are impacted by a decision like that at least to the table to discuss it before decisions are made. Judge Needham?
Yeah, first, for the benefit of supervisors who may not be familiar with the acronym, MRT is Moral Recognition Therapy. So it's a program that is designed to help those who think, what I'll characterize maybe in a criminal mindset, how to kind of reshape how they think and how they approach situations, approach decision-making. It started 7 or 8 years ago when Lisa Maltoff, who was employed by the District Attorney's Office and runs their diversion program, went to a training, and then I believe there were a couple of other people trained, and it was run really out of the District Attorney's Office. About 2 years ago, DHS came to us and said, well, we think this is maybe a program that we could run and we could facilitate, so they sent some people for training. The district attorney then shifted their participants in their diversion program, who were required to do MRT, to that program. Treatment court, Judge Nordstrand, a lot of his people in that program are required to complete MRT as part of their programming. And then there are times when I, as a judge, or Judge Waterman, or Vlack, as part of a sentencing, will say, as a condition of probation, we want you to complete this. I mean, you've got, 18 convictions and you're 28 years old. There's something going on in how you think. And so we want to get you into a program that's cognitively based to, as I said, kind of reshape. Things were working well, and then last week we received an email from the department saying that, in their opinion, it wasn't cost effective for them to run it anymore, and they were going to end. And so, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but it would have been, from our standpoint, preferable to have some discussions about, okay, if you're going to end it, what is the plan for continuing it, because we have people involved and people who we need to. So we've sent a couple of emails, and I think there are some at least ideas being floated. Department of Corrections has now said, well, maybe we can do it, but they're going to do it as a virtual, as a Zoom program, which I've not talked to Lisa, but my understanding is that maybe not the best way to offer that service, because participants call each other out if they don't believe they're being honest, or if they don't believe that they've done whatever the assignment is for that week, and so you lose that personal interaction by offering it as a Zoom or as a virtual alternative. So as I said, I did send an email back to DHS just expressing some disappointment there wasn't any collaboration about, okay, if you're going to end it, how do we now keep it going for those that are already in the program and those who we again believe would be of benefit. Now, I think Lisa still has her training, but her responsibilities have expanded significantly over the last couple of years that I don't think the DA could absorb it back in. So we're kind of in a catch-22 right now. We've talked to Justice Services about maybe there's a mechanism by which we could offer it through our Justice Services Department, but we really don't want to lose the program. We just have to figure out how we're going to offer it and not lose that revenue stream from the Department of Corrections. So that's where we're at.
Any questions from the supervisors for Mr. Witt or on the MRT program? I think it's something we really want to watch, though, because it is very important to, as the judge suggested, to several departments that are here today. And so I would just ask the administrator, maybe for next month, to consider what's been said and perhaps come back to us with either the resolution of the issue or suggestions on how we can resolve the issue. But it certainly, obviously, is very important to some critical elements of the county. Administrator, what, you're still up?
Yeah, well, the financial report is done, but I have other things on the agenda.
Exactly. So we'll turn to you for those next items.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is a review of our capital improvement plan. Let me make this a little bit bigger. That's so small I can't even read that. All right, so as part of our review process, capital improvement planning, we take a look at, and I'll highlight some areas here for you guys that are most pertinent. I'm going to give you a brief overview. So capital improvement planning, it takes several months of review. Right now where we're at is department heads have made their request. We sort of have consolidated all those, made a workable plan from the staff perspective about how these projects can move forward. So right now we're going to come back to each of the standing committees and we're going to show them the projects that were requested that are pertinent to the departments that you oversee. It's your first chance to see some of these projects, so this may be an introduction for you. If you have questions on those projects, feel free to ask the department heads that are here about those. But really what we're trying to do is get a little bit of input, a little bit of gauge if this is the right direction or not the right direction. So if you go, what are you asking for that for? You don't need a new roof on that building. Well, then tell us now so we don't put the new roof on the building. But this is the purpose of this meeting then, is introduction to these. You'll have additional chances to review this, really a couple of chances. There'll be a committee of the whole meeting that we do, I don't know, September, October, I think September, where we go through all the capital projects and you actually have a chance to vote at that meeting on each of the projects. and then we make a final version that's included in the budget. So that's technically when you're formally adopting it, is when it's adopted in the budget. So right now we'll go through the pieces that are applicable for public protection. A lot of these are more facilities related, although it is for pieces at the building. So colors, if you see, the far left is sort of our accounting system of it. We have some project numbers, and then we come across for 5 future years. So 2023 all the way out to 2027. Then we give you some additional details about each of these projects. If it's in black, it's been on a prior approved plan. If it's in red, that's a new addition onto this plan. No one's ever looked at it before if it's in red. This is the first time you're seeing it. If it's in this blue color, we've adjusted that number. We've changed that number. If you go back and look at the prior year adopted version of it, that number is going to be different. Most of the time we're adjusting for inflationary reasons. And so there's things that have gone up, namely roofs. They've gone way up. So 2027 is where we'll expect to see new projects coming in. And so some of these facility ones, that's what you're seeing up here. Down here we have courtroom equipment. So this is a brand new project that we've added onto the list. We went, is it 2 or 3 years ago now, that we did some major upgrades to all of the courtroom technology. We made a significant investment, I think it was over $300,000 that we put into the courtrooms for technology. So some of those items are going to start coming up for replacement though. And so we've created a new line item. It'll probably be a recurring line item every year so that we can continue to update and replace those pieces of technology as they wear out or they go bad, so that we have a pool of cash to draw from for those types of projects. So right now we're budgeting just $10,000 a year, and that's to replace some of the TV displays that are in those courtrooms, because I think we've already experienced some technology issues with them. So we're anticipating that that's going to continue, and that'll be an ongoing need for us. We have a copy machine out here. So this is a recurring item every 5 years. So let's see, the $12,000 one, that's the clerk of courts one. All right, that's Christie's. The $18,000 one, that's the DA. They must make a lot more copies. All right. These highlighted sections are all then related directly to your different departments that report to you. So we have law enforcement. You can see that these numbers, these are the sheriff's vehicles. They're in blue. There's been an inflationary factor on vehicles. If you haven't heard about that, the cost of vehicles are going up. And then we added the new year on the end. So squad vehicles are purchased through the KIP. We have body cameras slated for next year, for 2023. That number is also in blue. That number actually came down. We actually decreased that number as they're getting closer to reviewing all of their different options. They were able to bring that cost estimate down closer to where we are right now.
Administrator Witt, could I interrupt for 1 second? I just noted that 2 days ago at the Wisconsin Legislative Branch, at their Joint Committee on Finance, they did approve a huge amount of money for body cams for police departments for grant purposes. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's something that you and the sheriff might well want to be aware of, and we might be able to save some money there too.
Yeah. We absolutely will pursue any grant opportunities that we have. Just because we budget for it doesn't mean that we're not pursuing those. What it means really, though, is that we're going to replace the body cameras we already have. We already have body cameras in the sheriff's office. We will replace the body cameras that we already have in 2023, regardless if we get the grant or not. But if we can offset those costs with the grant, we absolutely will. And the fact that we already have body cameras might make us a little less competitive. In corrections then, some appliances that were already on the plan. We did now add the $30 million jail expansion, which is the phase 3 of the project for the government center. So when we did our space needs study, it was in 4 phases. So phase 1 is the warm storage building that's under construction on the north side of the building right now. You probably see that they took down the impound area. That's right where that warm storage building is going to go. That's phase 1 of the construction. Phase 2 of the construction is the addition onto the government center, which you'll see in earnest get started next year. It's in the design phase right now. So phase 3, which was slated about 5 to 7 years out, and 5 years out from now, is the jail expansion. So we've estimated at this point about $30 million. That does have inflationary growth every year built into it. So that's what we're expecting. That'll be a pod expansion, which will expand the total capacity of the jail. So right now, it's really just putting it on your radar that this is out there. We won't even start planning until probably 2 years before that. But we want to be fully forthcoming about these projects and the needs that the county has well in advance so that you can brace yourself for $30 million. And then in emergency communications, the only change on there was we did a cost adjustment on the 2-seat expansion in 2024. And I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Yep. So that is all the projects related to this committee for capital improvement projects. Do you have any input on any of those projects?
Well, I don't have any input on them, but I was wondering, do we get a report or do we have a status of capital improvement projects for this year? I see this is for 2023 because they're not in our regular reports or budget, correct?
You know, it's not on this committee's report. It is on the county board financial report.
Okay.
So we do have the KIP project. So it's going to be in the exact same format. And it's going to list all the current projects where we've spent to date, the balance that's remaining on all of those projects, so that you have a monthly track of where all the currently approved projects are.
I think we're good to continue.
All right. All right, so one more item here. So review of mandated services. So the mandated services are, this is a report that was originally created in 2015. We updated it in 2020. So much of what the county does is mandated by state government. And they don't necessarily give us the money to do it. They just tell us to do it. So we've created this report, like I've said, multiple times over the years to show what those mandated services are. And then in this report, I mean, it's a little mislabeled as mandated, but we have discretionary services listed here too. So every department that we have, we've listed basically the services that they've provided. Really, the focus has been on what's mandated. What is the state telling us you have to do? You don't have a choice in the matter. So one of the things that I've suggested, and again, this is your deal, not my deal, but is to go through these mandated services. So at this point, we're not going to start going line by line through them. I'm looking for input from you of how you want to go through those, the pace that you want to go through. And we'll give that direction then to the department heads, and they can come back then at future meetings and be prepared to answer those type of questions that you have. I have given the department heads a format to follow, you know, some basic questions about what I would expect that you would be interested in hearing about for those, so that we could have some consistency across the different standing committees. But really, I think it's the pace that you want to go through it, and the level of detail that you want to go through it. So I'm not here to dictate that for you. I'm here to offer this up and let you take it from here.
If I could just jump in at this point. I think this is a good idea for the county to review. It gives the supervisors a chance to really understand what each of the departments is doing, even more than we normally receive in our reports. I think that as the general discussion has been, that we were hoping to conclude all this in time for next year, not the 2023 budget, but the 2024 budget. So, but we want to begin it fairly soon. And so if anybody has any other suggestions, that's fine. But I was just going to suggest we have about 6 items to consider. And I would just suggest a reasonable way to proceed would be to do something like either 1 item per meeting over the next 6 months, or do 2 items, maybe skip a month, and 2 items, skip a month, 2 items, and really get into it in that fashion so that we complete our work more or less by the end of this calendar year, or very early next year if we have additional questions. So that's just a suggestion as to how we might want to proceed, so we don't do it all at once, or that we don't delay it for too long a period before we start, so that we can give the department heads time to prepare, and for ourselves time to prepare. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay. Well, what I'll do then is I'll try to work with the administrator and a couple of the departments, and recommend that for depending on another decision we make later in the meeting, that we either begin the process we'll begin the process right after this meeting by talking about it, and then we'll decide which offices we'll look at first, but certainly no later than September we'll begin, and maybe as early as August. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So that's how we'll proceed on that. All right, our supervisor.
Yeah, my question is, what's going to be included in the report? Because it would be, you probably already talked about it, but it'd be good to know what's funded, what's not, how much each one cost, how much we're spending on it. I don't know how much of that information is going to be included in the report, or what I should be looking for.
Yeah, those are the exact questions that I asked the departments to be prepared to answer. So I guess I'm not really sure what to expect from each department. I'm going to tell you, it is a substantial amount of work we're asking the departments to put together. So I think we'll probably get some varying degrees of detail from each of the different departments. But I think either way, when they get to the committee and we're reviewing those items, I think all of the department heads are knowledgeable enough that they'll be able to share that information relatively accurately with you for questions that you may have.
Supervisor Ramberg.
And also, one thing that I might be looking for is the department heads and the subject matter experts may find in each of the mandated services or a mandated service that may be outdated, and maybe the intent doesn't marry up with the content anymore, or maybe it never did, and that would maybe give us something to move on to the state legislature. We could come up with something, the county board, to send in something to the state to review it, and maybe give our opinion that way, and that might help the departments in working with these mandates as well.
Yeah, excellent idea. I actually hadn't thought of it from that perspective, but yeah, that's a good idea.
If there are no other questions for Administrator Witt, we'll turn to the next item on the agenda, and that's Chief Judge Needham, report on the Circuit Court update.
Thank you. There's not a lot to report. I'll give you, I guess, some odds and ends. I think most of you are aware that we had a little hiccup with our CASA program, which is the court-appointed special advocate program that the county gave us some seed money, and we got off to a very good start by hiring a director and getting some volunteers who we were training. And then, as I said, rather abruptly, the director resigned his position to take a new position, which, as I understand, he described as, kind of a no-brainer, but it left us somewhat in the lurch. It's not a county program, it's a separate 501c3, but the concept is that volunteers are assigned by the court to work with kids who are not of home placement through child protection types of issues. So I talked to Roy Schoberg, who is the chair of their board of directors. I believe they've interviewed, they're hopeful to offer the director's position, but to the credit of the state organization, we've not really missed a beat. The state has stepped up, continued the training modules, is working with our current volunteers to make sure that they're supported. But anyway, that was something that certainly was unexpected. We welcome Phil Golly as our new Justice Services Director. Modestly, he didn't give his formal title as Dr. Phil Golly, as he just got his PhD within the last couple of weeks, and he brings with him a wealth of experience, former probation agent, and obviously now in the academic world, but collaboration and working as a team is certainly, I think, one of his hallmarks, and we really look forward to his engagement with the courts. As a result of not having a director, CJCC, which is the Community Justice Collaborating Committee, has kind of been put on hold. The director really coordinates a lot of the subcommittee work and a lot of the work of the committee itself. So we did not have our regular CJCC meeting in May, in fairness to Phil, who was, I think, on the job 2 days, and I would have expected him then to facilitate and get a meeting going. So we passed on the May meeting, but we have spoken to him as judges to express, the need to kind of reinvigorate and get our subcommittees going and get CJCC back on track. One of the task forces that is meeting pretty regularly is the Child Protection Juvenile Justice Task Force. I learned yesterday that we've taken 10 more children into temporary physical custody for child protection issues through, I believe, yesterday than we did the entirety of all last year. And I'll just leave it there in terms of what's happening in child protection. And I think we learned yesterday we have, my recollection is 80 to 90 kids out of home right now in out-of-home placements on child protection issues. So that obviously is an area that I know the department, the courts are looking at, but it's something that has really inflated the time that, and these come up spur of the moment. We have to have a hearing within 48 hours, and so we fit it in. We make sure that we get those hearings in, but it impacts on the district attorney, it impacts on the public defender. But that is something, again, we're hopeful it's just a blip and that things level out, but right now that is an area that we are watching pretty closely.
Judge Nademan,
Yes.
if you were finished with that thought.
Yes.
I just want to say we're fortunate to have Supervisor Carlson, who has a good deal of expertise in that area with us, and certainly if he would like to pursue this a little deeper with the judge at some point and come back to us with any recommendations, that would be very welcome. And we appreciate his expertise on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Staffing, we're at capacity in the courts as well as the clerk of courts, although the sheriff is pirating one of Christie's staff members. We're losing one of the clerk of court staff to the sheriff's department, so Christie will be recruiting and bringing somebody on board. But as I think all of you are aware, we've had 5 new hires within the last couple of months, and these are not jobs that you just walk in and start doing. The training is 6, 9, 12 months, and so her staff has been phenomenal at helping the new employees. Her lead workers and others are really bringing these people up to speed as quickly as we can, but we're not widget makers, and so the learning curve is pretty significant for most people that come into that position. That's pretty much all I've got, unless any of you have any questions.
Judge, I had just a question for you or Administrator Witt relative to the CASA program. Personnel changes happen, but will there be any fiscal impact that you see in the near future that is different from what we thought would happen with CASA?
Well, I know Mr. Schoberg has put in his request to the county administrator for some ongoing support from the county. The county is very generous in providing a space, office space as well as the accommodations for that office and that space. They also were very generous in their initial startup money. They've also received some money from the state, but as I understand, they would like to get some continuing financial support from the county. How that looks or how it works is beyond my understanding. I know they're very active also in writing grants and trying to get funding through the Anderson Foundation, Bremer, Bayport, some other foundations that are hopefully going to be in a position to help a project like this. But I think Mr. Schoberg and the board have at least had some preliminary discussions with Administrator Witt about ongoing support.
In the hiring of a new director, is that going out in a broad call, or how is that handled?
Yeah, again, because it's a separate entity, my understanding is that the board has used a number of different platforms to try to attract. I believe one of the candidates who they did interview was from Kansas or Nebraska or someplace. I know it was a remote interview. So yes, it went out on a number of different sites to try to attract, as broad a range of candidates as possible.
Thank you, Judge. Our next item on the agenda is the sheriff's update. Welcome, Sheriff Knudsen.
Good morning. Well, of the 2 times that the sheriff's office representative was in front of the board, Kathy Borgschutz covered both of them. So this is actually my first time in front of you guys. My apologies for the first 2. Normally I'm not absent that much, but the sheriff's office updates. So Kathy Borgschutz, as I just mentioned, just retired last Wednesday. Actually, her last day was yesterday, and so today we start a new chapter with the sheriff's office. I'd like to introduce Brent Standard as the new chief deputy. Brent's in the back of the room there. Brent's 26, going on to his 27th year with the sheriff's office, and has held such positions as starting in the jail, patrol investigations, captain over emergency support services, amongst several other ancillary SWAT and canine, some other duties as well. So he's widely experienced in a number of areas, and he assumes his duties officially today. So we welcome him into that. I mentioned everything you wrote for me, right, Brent? Thanks. So as we move forward, you'll find that our agency and our profession is probably one that is more in the spotlight than many other professions out there, and have been for several years. So there will be maybe some hot topics that we'll discuss as we move through the next couple years. And I hope that you'll find that I'm as candid as possible when I meet before you folks. And I'm as open to showing operations in the jail. Anybody wants tours, discussion of maybe some topics that really affect everybody. I entertain those conversations. And I think we have to have those conversations in order for at least the board to understand our profession better. It's easy to get down a rabbit hole in what is reported in whatever form of news outlet. But there's always another side to things, and I hope over the next couple of years I can do my very best to at least inform of what some of our tough challenges are, and how many times we are responsive to the climate that we're dealt with. So, and I think that actually goes for several people on this panel, that we get dealt some hands that we just have to play, and we really can't sit out. So I hope that conversation, that those are had. And again, like I said, I welcome those conversations. Part of the body cam topic, we've had those for a couple years, and the guys actually appreciate them, and I know I appreciate them as well. They have helped us tremendously. They help the two gentlemen to my right currently as well. It helps the courts, it helps the district attorney, it helps the public defender, it helps our system. So we will continue to provide as open and transparent operations as possible. Part of that open and transparent is also somewhat statute-driven in one area. So I'll kind of move on to our annual inspection. So under Wisconsin Statute 59.54, which is public protection and safety, there's actually something that is mandated that this committee is a part of as well, and that's the annual inspection of the jail. Last year we did it in August, and historically it's been done in February, but because of COVID and trying to, we had some outbreaks in the jail, and that's an area that those folks can't go out and get fresh air. So we try to limit as much in and out as we can as far as tours or going through. So the last couple of years, it's actually been pushed back to August. So I will throw it to the board on when we would like it this year, and I'll read the statute. Annual inspection, at least once each year, the board of each county or a committee thereof shall visit, inspect, and examine each jail maintained by the county as to health, cleanliness, and discipline, and the keeper of the jail shall lay before the board or the committee a calendar setting forth the name, age, and cause of committal of each prisoner. If it appears to the board or committee that any provision of the law have been violated or neglected, the board or the committee shall immediately give notice of the violation to the district attorney of the county. So we will do an entire tour of the jail facility, and normally Jim Ellsbury with facilities is also there, going through, taking notes, and we'll show you guys our operations. Reading this, we've talked in the past, and I've spoken with the board previously. Some of it is probably more outdated in the shall lay before a calendar setting forth the name, age, and cause of committal. I think we look back to the old jail logs books. So by computer we'll print off, if you so desire, the daily inmate count and the requested or required things to show. Right now we're running maybe close to about 100 in the jail. In the past, in July of 19, we got to 151. Our total capacity is 181, but we can't have total capacity. We have to do a percentage of that. So when we get into the 170s, we're full. That has kind of led that discussion of what does the future look like? What does 5 years look like? What does 10 years look like? COVID hit, and part of our restructuring of the way we did business was electronic home monitoring. That has also made a difference in some of our housing numbers, but the system also had to morph over the last couple years. The courts shut down for a very short time, very short, probably some of the shortest in the state.
We didn't shut down, period. We went to half days for 2 weeks, and then that was not sustainable.
And there are places that are still, correct?
Yes.
Still not back to full. So we've kept up quite well, but we had to rethink some of the things and some of the placements. So
Sheriff, if I could jump in real quick, just picking up on what you just said about the jail inspection. I'd thought about that and some of the things we talked about in our last meeting. And so I was going to make a recommendation to you folks, and we can just talk about it real quickly and see if it meets the sheriff's schedule. I was going to suggest that we do our annual jail inspection at our next meeting. Now, that's the last item on our agenda, so I'm kind of leaping to that. But we do it July 7th, and that we do only the jail inspection, so that we would not have a meeting here in the room and require everybody to come in and talk, but we just do the jail inspection, and that we do it at a time convenient for the sheriff. If that time and at 8 o'clock time works for you, and if it works for us, that we just do that in July. So then we would skip our, I'll call our substantive meeting in July, and pick up at our next meeting, which would be August 4th, for our next meeting where we'd meet with all the folks that are here today. Does that suggestion fit with everybody's calendar? Looks like I'm getting a lot of nods. Sheriff, if that works for you, that's what we'll plan on then, and if you need to get back to me, we can be flexible on that, but July 7th at 8 o'clock at the jail is when we would plan to have our next PPJ meeting, and it would just be the annual jail inspection.
And that, as Administrator Witt mentioned, it's about 2 hours, so we'll
Yes,
plan
yeah,
on-
yeah, that's right. It takes a good deal of time to go through. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Adams.
Sheriff, is there an inspection checklist that we could get in advance, just so we kind of know what we're looking for or looking at?
There hasn't been, and it really doesn't, and the statute is fairly vague on what you should be looking for. But if anything sticks out, I mean, if something doesn't look right, if you have questions on it, please bring it up. We can either explain it or fix or correct it. But it's really, you'll get down, we'll have, you'll be able to talk to the kitchen. You can ask any questions you'd like about dietary plans, what they're fed each day. Medical staff will be there. We'll be able to walk through there and see the medical and mental health that is available as well, so.
And then would there be an opportunity to sample a lunch there also?
We could probably, at that time, with this advance notice, I could probably set aside what is, let me check on that with the kitchen, but yeah, I have no objections to that either. That's actually probably a pretty good thing.
Having been around a couple of brigs in the Navy, Marine Corps side, eating is a big issue, so just curious.
Well, and I will say we've gone to a new contract just recently. Within the last 8 months, I think it was last October, we did a breach of contract with our prior food vendor because of the poor quality. And inmates were throwing it against the walls. And that's no exaggeration. It was very poor. So we did a breach of contract. We have a new contract service. So yes, food is extremely important that they are satisfied with what they're receiving. We're meeting our dietary guidelines.
Supervisor Carlson.
Does the inspection, is it mostly just a physical inspection, or does it also include like an overview of regulations, procedures, like restraint procedures, intake procedure, that kind of stuff?
We could probably provide, let me think on that, on what we could provide for that. And that would be the time to ask questions, and we can go through some of the devices that we would use, like what we call the wrap, for somebody that's out of control. We can walk through that, and the scanner, when people come in and they're scanned. That's a time to throw out as many questions, and we'll walk through and supply as much as we can, so.
Supervisor Adams.
I'd like to compliment the sheriff. I was able to meet with him offline, and he gave me a great tour of his whole facility and the jail, and I would recommend, if possible, if the committee members could do that before this inspection. I think it would give us a heads up on what we're looking at, so I surely appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I know Mr. Fiedler, Chair Fiedler has been through, but Supervisor Carlson, I don't know, Supervisor Ramberg, I've never called you that before, Supervisor Ramberg. I'm not sure if you've ever been ahead of tour of the jail. So as long as we don't run into any quorum issues, I'd be happy to, because you could probably get a lot of questions answered there, and then we could do the official statutory requirement on that day, and that may help to answer a lot of the questions on how we do things down there. I'm very open to that. So July 7th, we will prepare for that. We also received a new communications van. I'd like to, somewhere in the future, one of your meetings also have that for you guys to go through. We can show you that has been a many years in process acquisition, and without the support of the board and some of the returning board members, it would not have happened. So I'd like you guys to see that as well. And
Sheriff, just a thought, since we were doing the jail inspection on the 7th,
I'm wondering if we don't have it here.
exactly, if we did an hour and 45 minutes, let's say, then it would take about 15 minutes to go through the communications van. And if that were here, we could double up on both of those, because it's right in the same area. I'm sure you'd park it right outside the door, and that might be a good twofer, if that sounds reasonable to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds fine. We'll do that as well. With Brent's, with Chief Deputy Standards promotion, that opens up a Emergency Support Services Captain that is being posted as well internally. And as we talk about staffing, we are actually in probably the healthiest we've been in a number of years. And I don't mean the last two, I mean a number of years. I think we have one open in dispatch, one on patrol that we are doing backgrounding on, and one is going through recruit school right now, so we will have the patrol spot filled. We have 2 short in the jail, which is phenomenal. Some of the returning members know at one point we were 16 down in the jail. We are now 2. And the record custodian position, we are still open for as well. So as far as our emergency services that the public sees and hears on the other end of the line, we're 4 short out of 120. And I would have to say, are one of the healthiest in that emergency services, probably in the surrounding region, as I speak with other sheriffs. So we have, through the help from Administrator Witt and through contracts and through some changes that we've made, we are in good shape right now. So I'm pleased about that. Janet, did I miss anything?
Any other questions for the sheriff? Thank you again, Sheriff, and that is a terrific number of personnel that you've now got in the office. I know it's been a big uphill climb, and I think you've hit the peak and done so nicely. Thank you.
I should mention also, and Patty may mention this as well, we're on our 3rd fatality this week. We've had one Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The numbers of critical calls that we're going to include mental health, to include people out of control, domestics. We are not starting off the summer in a good spot. And again, each one of these 3 fatalities were not related, again, separate days. One was just last night, and that happened in Somerset Township. Gentleman, young guy, early 20s, that was killed on a 2-car crash. The one Tuesday was another young gentleman, 20 years old, that was hit by a train by Roberts. Interestingly enough, sadly enough, the stretch on 130th Street through 200th Street, that 7-mile stretch of crossings between Roberts and Baldwin, are some of the deadliest on the Union Pacific, as they have also relayed to us from Minneapolis to Chicago. We had set up a traffic detail yesterday. It just coincided with the day after the fatal. And we had I heard today 44 stops of people either running or not stopping, other violations in those areas, and we cooperatively worked with Wisconsin State Patrol and the Railroad Police. The numbers are, we usually have we've had a fatal a year in that stretch, and those are fatals. I don't know how many vehicles we've had hit. Trucks, FedEx truck got hit a couple years ago. Milk truck. We have our work ahead of us, so I just wanted to relay that to the board that that was number 6. 6 traffic fatalities thus far in 2022. So we have averaged over the last 10 years probably about 8, 9, 10. So we're not starting out well. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. The only thing I would add before we turn to the medical examiner is, and it doesn't well, it does in a sense relate to the sheriff, but the incidents down in Texas over the last week, I'm sure have been a topic of enormous conversation between yourself and other law enforcement entities. And I know that some of those things you may be able to casually share with us, or otherwise, I know that we would endorse anything that you're doing by way of planning and any needs that you have relative to that topic. If you had to come back to us, I'm sure we would be very inclined to listen very hard to whatever suggestions you might be making. So I don't have any specific question on that, but I know that that's got to be in everybody's forefront of our minds. Supervisor Ramberg.
A piece of information that maybe some have forgotten over the years is the speed of the trains have increased in recent years as well. They've been able to increase their speed, and that fakes people out as well when they're crossing. And I thought there was an initiative some years ago to share that with the public, but I don't think anything was done at the crossings to warn people. Just a piece of information for future discussions.
And all of those crossings, are stop sign only. I don't think there's any flashing lights through that area. They're all stop sign.
With that, I'll turn to our medical examiner, Patty Schachner. Patty?
Good morning. As Scott has said, we have been operating with a lot of very traumatic incidents. In the last month or so, we had a homicide, suicide, 3 suicides, traffic fatalities. So yes, our staff, along with law enforcement, is being exposed to a lot in short amount of time. So recovery, you can tell, is wearing on staff too. So I think it's always important to keep that on all of our minds, that we're all of us are doing this work together. Along with that, our viewings are up at the DD building, and I'm very grateful and appreciative to facilities and the sheriff's office and our local clergy that come in and help. One of the things that we do is, because we do transport bodies, we do offer families the ability to view at the office, which is very helpful in the grieving process. And, we make sure it's safe, it's private. Years ago, it would be done at the scene, and we just don't do that anymore. So we have a kind of compassionate setting that we do this here work. June 6th is our mental health symposium. That's coming. It'll be at 6 p.m. at Northwoods Community College in New Richmond. I hope that you guys will be able to attend. It should be about an hour and a half long. Health and Human Services, Veteran Services, myself, and Public Health will be working together to do this symposium and just really talk about the state of mental health here in St. Croix County and the actual services that are being offered. So for you all to know that there is a lot of work being done by a lot of different people, by the folks here in the team in St. Croix County. Our building
Patty,
project.
could I just inquire? You said June 6th. Did you mean June 6th, or is that
Oh,
June?
June 8th.
June 8th.
Excuse me,
Yep.
at 6.
Thank you.
Whoopsies.
Thank you. June 8th at 5 o'clock, I think it begins?
Nope,
or-
6.
6, I'm
6
sorry,
to
you're right. That's
8:30.
right, that's
Yep.
right.
The building project is moving along. We've got a few hiccups, but we will get there. The cooler is in, so that's exciting for us. Our van that was crashed in January is still on standby, but we have been busy, and I've had to take our crashed van out and use it. So if you hear anything about St. Croix County driving around in a crashed vehicle, that's me. And so we make do. And also, starting Monday, our UW intern starts with us, and we will be tackling with public health. We'll be getting all the data from all our suicides from 2014 to May 31st, going through a really deep data dive, and then also connecting it with the social determinants of health so that we can actually start looking at, that's not my strong point, but to have this public health intern come in and really look at what the information we have will probably be more helpful in preventative strategies than trying to throw new programs and everything out there, so we can see what are the connections. As you all know, we are now almost 4 years now with only men dying by suicide. Our age has went up to 52, so it's matching kind of all the state and national data, but the only thing that's different is in St. Croix, the national average is about 60% suicides by gun, and in St. Croix County it's 80%. So it's quite high here. But, you know, once we get all this data and can make sense with it and have the people that really know what they're looking at, it probably will be very helpful for everybody when we're done. So that's a 6-week intern, 40 hours a week. We should get a good project and a good product out of that that will be able to help us do some work. So that's all I got right now, and our numbers are almost comparable to last year, so which is good. But we're now hitting into our busy time, so we'll see how it looks.
Any questions for the medical examiner?
I'm always the Debbie Downer, sorry.
Well, I'm glad the cooler's in. That's a big step.
I know, it's exciting.
That's huge. Well, thank you, Patty. I just wanted to note that we also have our district attorney, our clerk of court, and child protection chief with us, and if anybody has any, they're not on the agenda specifically, but if anybody has any questions, I'm sure they're able to stick around and answer them. Also, I want to note that the chairman of our board, Bob Long, is with us today. And Bob, if you had any thoughts or comments, we'd be happy to entertain those, and he's being modest and saying no. So with that, we'll turn to our future agenda items. Does anybody have a future agenda item that we haven't covered yet to bring up? We can always just give me a call, we'll put them on the agenda, and we'll do that. Okay, so we'll move on to announcements and correspondence, and I would just say, I forgot to do this earlier, it was my fault. I had earlier been notified by Supervisor Leaf that she had a prior engagement today, so she was excused, and she's always at our meetings, so I'm sorry I missed that earlier. Any other announcements, Janet? Hearing no announcements, if we have nothing more to discuss, we're adjourned. Thank you.